Hello there, and welcome to the Sleep Porch. Tonight, we are wandering into a place full of wonder and mystery. The forest can feel familiar by day, but as nighttime falls, it transforms into a different world entirely. After sunset, the forest does not fall asleep. It changes its rhythm. Paths grow quieter, yet movement increases. Sounds carry farther, senses linger longer, and ordinary trees begin taking part in hidden behaviors most people never witness. This is a world shaped by moonlight, patience, and the quiet intelligence of nature. The forest at night is a place filled with purpose, where life reorganizes itself according to ancient rhythms. As we move through this nocturnal landscape together, you may discover the darkness is rich with silent signals, subtle exchanges, and creatures at work just beyond human perception. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here as well, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there's nothing you need to do but relax. Allow your body to soften and your breathing to slow. And let your mind unwind as we step softly into this fascinating world. Let's begin. Forests at night can be brighter than man-made cities. On warm, humid evenings, fireflies can gather in such density that whole edges of a forest seem to pulse. Not like a single spark, but like a breathing field. In a few places around the world, certain firefly species even coordinate their timing, so the glow rises and falls together as if the trees are blinking. The strange part is how it changes your sense of scale. A city light is fixed and indifferent. This light responds. It drifts. It swells, it thins, and it can suddenly ignite again a few steps farther on. You realize the darkness is not empty. It is full of living decisions. Some mushrooms glow to attract insects that spread their spores. In certain forests, a rotting log can hold a secret that only appears after dark. A mushroom may shine with a greenish glow, not bright like a lamp, but steady enough to be noticed by small night visitors. The light comes from chemistry inside the fungus, and it can turn a patch of decay into a beacon. Insects that would otherwise fly past can be drawn in, landing, crawling, and brushing against the spore-releasing surfaces. Then they leave, carrying the next generation on their bodies to another damp corner of the woods. It is a clever solution to a night problem. Wind is unreliable under dense trees, so the fungus recruits movement instead. What looks like simple glowing is actually a strategy, a quiet advertisement in the dark. You are watching a forest conversation that does not use sound or scent, only a gentle, persistent shine. Deer see better at night because their eyes recycle light. A deer steps into dusk and the world opens up for it. Part of that advantage comes from a reflective layer behind the retina that bounces incoming light back through the eye, giving the deer a second chance to capture it. That is why deer eyes can seem to shine when caught in headlights. The glow is not the animal producing light, it is light being returned. This setup helps deer navigate and stay alert when the forest becomes a maze of dim shapes. Their pupils can also widen dramatically, letting in more of the night. What feels to us like a loss of detail is for them a shift into a different kind of clarity, where movement matters most. It changes the whole balance of the forest. A deer can feed longer into the evening and detect danger earlier, which means the night is not only a hiding place for predators, it is also a protective advantage for prey that can read darkness well. Night breezes can carry a forest's scent signals for miles. When the sun drops, air often settles into smoother layers, and the forest becomes better at transporting smell. A faint trail from a flowering plant, a warning chemical from a chewed leaf, or the musk of an animal passing through can travel farther than it would in the broken turbulence of daytime heat. This matters because scent is one of the forest's oldest communication systems. It can guide pollinators toward the right place, steer herbivores away from danger, and help predators or prey locate each other without a single sound. The strange part is how directional it can be. A breeze can become a narrow corridor that carries information straight through the trees. That is why some animals lift their noses and paws, not because they are uncertain, but because they are reading. The forest is constantly sending messages, and at night, the air becomes a more reliable messenger, delivering signals to listeners who may be far beyond your view. Moths can smell a mate from astonishingly far downwind. A moth searching for a partner is not wandering randomly. It is following a thread in the air. Many moths detect pheromones, chemical signals released in tiny amounts, and their feathery antennae are built to catch them. What seems unbelievable is how sensitive this can be. Under the right conditions, a male moth can respond to a scent trail that began far away, moving in a zigzag pattern as it repeatedly loses and finds the signal, steering back into the plume. It is not a straight-line chase. It is more like solving a shifting puzzle in real time, with wind as the puzzle maker. This ability helps explain why moths appear so suddenly, as if from nowhere, at the exact moment a flower opens or a porch light flickers on. They were already out there, searching through darkness by smell, guided by a message so small we would never notice it, yet so clear to them, it becomes direction. The forest floor is busiest after sunset, not at noon. Daytime movement can be risky. Heat, dryness, and hungry eyes make the ground a dangerous stage. After sunset, the forest floor becomes a different world, cooler and safer for small bodies that would overheat or dry out in sun. This is when snails and slugs travel farther, when beetles and ants run their roots, when frogs and salamanders emerge if the ground is damp enough under leaves. Countless tiny hunters begin working. From spiders to centipedes, each one tuned to the darkness. Even scavengers join in, breaking down what fell during the day and keeping the forest from becoming clogged with leftovers. You might walk the same path at noon and think it is quiet, then walk it after dark and realize it is busy, just not in a way that announces itself. The activity is low to the ground, threaded through leaf litter, hidden in moss, and happening right at your feet. At night, the canopy becomes a highway for hidden travelers. The upper branches of a forest can look still from below, but at night, they become pathways. Many animals avoid the ground after dark because the forest floor carries its own dangers, so they take to the trees instead. Squirrels can move in quick leaps along familiar routes, and in some forests, gliding mammals can cross gaps without ever touching the ground. Smaller climbers use bark ridges like ladders, slipping between twigs and leaves where you would never think to look. Even certain insects choose the canopy because it offers food and escape routes in every direction. The canopy also changes the rules of sound. A soft movement up high can be swallowed by wind and leaves, making travelers nearly invisible to anything below. It is a layered city built in living wood. From the ground, you see a ceiling. Up there at night, it is a network of roads, shortcuts, hiding places, and quiet corridors that connect the forest into one continuous space. Fireflies synchronize flashes, turning meadows into living constellations. This happens because a flash is not just light, it is language. Different firefly species use different timing patterns, like distinct signatures in the dark. And the right pattern matters more than brightness. Males often drift low over grass, sending their rhythm into the night, while females watch from leaves and answer only when the signal is correct. Some species even adjust their timing when other flashes crowd the scene, staying recognizable in the confusion. That means the meadow is not simply pretty, it is a moving conversation where every pulse carries identity, location, and intent. The chemistry behind the glow is efficient, producing far more light than heat, which lets fireflies shine without burning energy wastefully. When you notice the flashes rising and falling across a field, you are seeing a nighttime courtship system built from precision. Spring peepers time their chorus with temperature-like living thermometers. A spring peeper is small enough to fit in a pocket, yet its voice can fill a whole wet woodland. These frogs are powered by body temperatures that follow the air and water around them, so their calling speed shifts with the night's warmth. On cooler nights, the chorus slows and spreads out like a careful heartbeat. On warmer evenings, it tightens into a fast, bright shimmer of sound that can feel almost electric. This is more than courtship singing. It is a seasonal timing signal, because peepers begin calling when conditions are safe enough for eggs and tadpoles to survive. That makes their calls a kind of nightly forecast, signaling that winter's hold is easing. If you have ever heard that sharp peeping tone along the edge of a dark pond, you were hearing temperature translated into sound. Katydids also sing in species-specific rhythms, like private radio stations. Katydid calls can sound like one continuous summer noise until you realize it is a dense skyline of many separate signals layered together. Each species uses its own beat, spacing, and tone. So the forest becomes a layered broadcast system where every singer is trying to be understood. Some katydids call from high branches, others from shrubs, and their voices occupy different sound spaces, almost like taking turns in invisible lanes. A listener who knows what to notice can tell which species is nearby just by the pattern, even without seeing a single insect. That matters because katydids are not performing for us. They are trying to reach the right partner in a noisy environment filled with other callers, wind, and rustling leaves. Their solution is a signature rhythm that stays recognizable. Once you hear that, the night stops sounding like one chorus. It becomes a collection of distinct stations, each transmitting a coded message through darkness. Coyotes use night roads and trails like a quiet map. A coyote moves through the dark with the confidence of something that has studied the landscape in silence. Roads, game trails, dry creek beds, and fence lines become smooth corridors that save energy and shorten travel time. In a forest, that kind of efficiency matters because every extra step costs calories and every unnecessary crash through brush makes noise. Coyotes also read what is left behind. Footprints, droppings, and scent marks like updates pinned along the route. That means a trail is not only a path, It is information about who passed, how recently, and what might be nearby. At night, when human activity drops, coyotes often expand their movements, stitching together fields and woods that feel disconnected in daylight. If you have ever heard distant yips and howls echoing across a dark tree, you are hearing a group keeping track of one another while navigating a shared map that is written into the ground itself. Raccoons can remember complex routes to food for years. A raccoon's paws are incredibly sensitive, and its brain is built for problem solving that pays off in snacks. When it finds a reliable food source, a fruiting tree, a patch of crayfish, a campsite bin, it does not just visit once and forget. It can learn the safest approach, the quietest climbing route, and the exact spot where a lid gives way, then return later with the same practiced confidence. This memory helps raccoons thrive in forests that change through seasons, because the animal can keep a mental catalog of options and switch plans when one disappears. That is why raccoon travel can look purposeful rather than random. It is following remembered routes that worked before. In the dark, that matters even more, because speed and certainty reduce risk. A raccoon that hesitates too long invites trouble. A raccoon that remembers does not need to waste time guessing. Skunks warn with stomps before they ever spray. A skunk's most famous defense is also the one it tries hardest not to use. Spraying costs resources and leaves the skunk vulnerable while it reloads. So the animal begins with a clear set of warnings. It may freeze, raise its tail, and stomp the front feet in sharp, deliberate beats. A sound meant to carry through leaf litter. That stomp is a message that says, "Stop now while there is still time." Many predators learn to respect it because the consequence is unforgettable. What makes this behavior oddly reassuring is how fair it is. The skunk gives you a chance to back away. It does not rely on surprise. In a night forest, where so many dangers are silent, the skunk is almost polite, announcing its boundary with a small drumbeat. If you ever hear quick stomps in the dark and see a tail lift like a flag, the safest move is simple. Leave calmly and let the warning do its job. Porcupines climb higher after dark to feed safely. A porcupine looks slow and awkward on the ground, but in trees, it becomes a patient specialist. After sunset, it may climb into the canopy to reach tender twigs, buds, and inner bark, foods that are safer to eat when fewer predators are watching. Its claws grip surprisingly well, and its heavy body moves with careful confidence along branches that seem too thin to hold it. The climb is not rushed. It is measured, because a fall would be costly. Once settled, the porcupine can spend long stretches feeding, almost invisible against dark bark, while its quills discourage most attacks. This nighttime routine also spreads out feeding pressure, since the animal can choose different trees across a wide area instead of stripping one place repeatedly. If you find fresh chimarks on high branches or bark peeled in narrow strips, you may be seeing the quiet signature of a nocturnal climber that treats the upper forest like a private dining room. Flying squirrels glide tree to tree using moonlight cues. A flying squirrel does not fly like a bird. It launches, spreads a skin membrane between its limbs, and turns a dangerous gap into a controlled glide. At night, this ability is a powerful escape tool, letting the squirrel cross open spaces quickly without dropping to the ground. The animal steers by shifting its body and using its tail like a rudder,
adjusting mid-glide to land on a trunk with surprising accuracy. Subtle light helps, not by making the forest bright, but by outlining branch shapes and clearing edges just enough to judge distance.
This is why gliding can feel almost ghostly to witness. One moment the squirrel is clinging to bark, the next it is silent motion, and then it disappears again into leaves. Gliding also helps it reach food patches spread across the canopy, connecting distant trees into one reachable neighborhood. In the dark, the forest is full of gaps. To a flying squirrel, many of those gaps are just shortcuts. Rabbits freeze so completely, their stillness becomes camouflage. A rabbit's best defense is often not speed, it is restraint. When danger is suspected, a rabbit can lock into stillness so total that even its breathing seems quieter. In a forest at night where predators key in on motion, this can be life-saving. The rabbit's mottled fur blends with dried grasses and leaf litter, and if it does not move, the shape stops announcing itself. This is not a passive trick. It is a deliberate choice, because the urge to bolt too early can reveal the rabbit's location. Waiting is a gamble, but it is often the right one. Some predators will scan and listen, then move on if nothing shifts. Only when the moment is perfect does the rabbit explode into motion, zigzagging toward cover with sudden power that feels almost impossible from such a quiet start. If you have ever walked a trail and only noticed a rabbit when it sprang away, you saw this strategy working. The rabbit was there the whole time, turning silence into safety. Foxes can hear mice moving under snow or leaf litter. A hunting fox is not just listening for squeaks, it is listening for tiny shifts, the soft scratch of claws, the whisper of a body brushing dry leaves, the faint tap of a hurried step. In winter, when snow covers the ground, the fox can still detect motion below the surface, then angle its head, adjust its stance, and commit to a single point, as if it is seen straight through the world. The famous pounce is not a leap of luck. It is a calculated strike guided by sound. Sometimes, the fox even jumps higher than seems necessary, bringing its forepaws down like a pin. In a dark forest, this turns the ground into a stage of hidden signals. A mouse thinks it is safely wrapped in cover, but every movement is an announcement. The fox simply knows how to interpret it, and the night becomes clear. Bobcats patrol boundaries nightly, reading scent like a bulletin board. A bobcat does not wander aimlessly. It checks a territory the way a careful neighbor checks locks, moving quietly along edges that matter, ridgel lines, creek corridors, and the invisible borders where its world meets another. Along the way, it finds messages left behind by other animals. A scrape in soil, a marked stump, a lingering odor on a low branch. These are not random smells. They are updates about who has passed, how recently, and whether the place is safe. The bobcat adds its own signature too, reinforcing the idea that this ground is claimed. What feels to us like a silent forest is, to the bobcat, crowded with information. Night makes this even more effective because heat and wind often settle, letting scent linger and stay readable. In that darkness, the bobcat becomes a quiet administrator, keeping order without noise, managing space through signals that never need to be spoken. Wolves may travel dozens of miles in a single night. A wolf pack can turn night into distance. While the forest rests, they can slip through it with steady purpose,
moving along rivers, ridges, and old paths that reduce effort and keep their bodies efficient. This travel is not frantic, it is endurance, a paced rhythm that can continue for hours, allowing the pack to search widely for prey, check scent trails, or regroup after spreading out. Wolves also use sound to keep a social map with howls that carry farther in cool night air, helping family members locate one another across large spaces.
That means the forest is not just where they live. It is something they actively measure and cover, stitching together valleys and hills into one connected home. By dawn, they may have crossed what would feel like a long journey to us. Yet to them, it was simply the night's work done on quiet feet and shared direction. Mountain lions move so silently, their footsteps can vanish in moss. A mountain lion is built for ambush, and silence is part of its anatomy. Soft paw pads reduce impact. Claws stay retracted to avoid clicking on stone or bark, and the body moves with controlled balance that keeps branches from snapping under sudden weight shifts. In a mossy forest, this can make the animal feel almost unreal. It can be close without announcing itself, and by the time you sense anything, it is already past. The mountain lion's hunting style depends on this quiet. Rather than chasing over long distances, it closes the gap unseen, using shadows and terrain like cover, and strikes with explosive speed when the moment is perfect. That creates a different kind of nighttime tension. The forest may sound calm, yet a top predator can be moving through it like a drifting shadow, leaving few tracks and fewer clues. The silence is not emptiness. Sometimes it is the sound of something highly skilled doing exactly what it evolved to do. Badgers reshape soil nightly, creating tunnels that outlast generations. A badger does not just dig a hole, it remodels the ground. With powerful forelimbs and long claws, it can break hard soil and throw it back with a speed that feels impossible for such a stocky body. Night after night, this work expands burrows, creates new chambers, and opens passages that can last long after the original builder is gone. Those tunnels change the forest in quiet ways. They loosen compacted earth, improve airflow underground, and create shelter that other animals may later use. From small mammals to reptiles and insects, even the piles of fresh soil can matter, bringing buried nutrients closer to the surface, where plants can access them. A badger's nightly labor becomes a kind of accidental engineering, not aimed at helping the forest, yet doing it anyway. When you see a fresh mound near a woodland edge, you are looking at a creature that is literally reshaping the landscape one clawful at a time. Armadillos dig for insects, leaving tiny pips like crater fields. An armadillo foraging at night can transform a patch of ground into a dotted map of small excavations. It walks with its nose close to the soil, searching for insects and grubs by scent, then digs with quick, efficient bursts. The result is a scatter of shallow pits that can look like miniature impact craters by morning. These dig spots are not only signs of a meal, they can also affect what happens next. Disturbed soil can catch moisture more easily, expose seeds, and create tiny pockets where new plants might sprout. The armadillo is not trying to garden, but its hunger leaves a signature that the forest responds to. Night helps it do this work safely, avoiding heat and many daytime threats. It is a strange kind of craftsmanship. A creature in armor, quietly combing the earth, opening it again and again, searching for life beneath the surface, and leaving evidence in the form of a pockmarked trail. Opossums eat ticks, quietly reducing the forest's parasite load. Opossums are often misunderstood, but their nightly habits can have a surprising side effect for the forest. As they move through undergrowth, ticks climb onto their fur, and later during grooming, opossums can consume many of them. This is not a heroic mission. It is simple self-care, but it can reduce the number of ticks that survive to bite other animals. In a night forest where deer, rodents, and predators all pass through the same corridors, parasites can spread easily. So any creature that removes them becomes part of the forest's quiet balancing act. Opossums are also tough survivors. They can eat a wide variety of foods. They do not panic easily, and when threatened, they may collapse into a convincing stillness that discourages attackers. Taken together, they become a kind of nighttime cleaner, moving through the shadows and doing small maintenance tasks that most people never see. The forest benefits, even if no one applauds. Hedgehogs cruise hedgerows, snuffling out beetles by scent alone. A hedgehog's night is a slow, determined patrol. It moves along edges where leaves gather and insects hide. Nose working constantly, picking up chemical hints we would never notice. The snuffling is not cute background noise. It is active searching, a steady process of locating beetles, larvae, and other small prey tucked under litter. When it finds a promising spot, it can push its face into tight spaces, relying on its spines as protection while it feeds. Those spines are not an aggressive weapon. They are a portable shield, but lets the hedgehog focus on food instead of fear. Night makes this lifestyle possible. Cooler air prevents overheating, and darkness lowers the risk of being spotted. Over time, hedgehogs can create familiar routes, returning to productive patches like a gardener checking beds. If you ever hear faint rustling near a hedge after dark, it might be a small, armored forager cleaning up insects, one careful mouthful at a time. Shrews have to eat almost constantly, turning nights into relentless hunts. A shrew lives at a frantic tempo, not from nervousness, but because its body burns energy at an extraordinary rate. Skipping a meal is not a mild inconvenience for a shrew. It can be dangerous. That reality turns the night into an ongoing search, a tiny predator threading through grass stems and leaf litter, sniffing, biting, and moving on. Shrews prey on insects, worms, and other small invertebrates. They can be unexpectedly fierce for their size, taking on prey that seems far too large for such a small mouth. Some species even use high-pitched sounds to help sense their surroundings in dense, cluttered spaces, giving them an advantage in the dark maze close to the ground. This non-stop feeding means shrews play a huge role in controlling insect populations, even though most people never see them. Their lives are short, their movements are quick, and their nights are packed with urgency. In a forest that feels calm, a shrew is pure motion, driven by the simple need to keep going. Moles push ridges through soil like moving underground waves. A mole spends most of its life in darkness so complete It never needs eyes to guide it. Its world is built from touch and pressure, with a nose that can feel vibrations and forelimbs shaped like powerful shovels. As it digs, it can push soil upward, creating ridges that travel across a lawn or forest edge like a slow-moving ripple. Those ridges are the surface expression of an underground hunt. Moles search for earthworms and other prey, patrolling tunnel systems that can be reused and expanded over time. The tunnels also change the soil itself, loosening it, mixing layers, and improving drainage in some places, while creating soft patches in others. To the forest, this is subtle engineering, done from below. You might only notice a raised line in the morning and think of it as damage, but it is evidence of a creature navigating a hidden, three-dimensional maze, reshaping the ground from the inside and living an entire nocturnal life beneath your feet. Salamanders emerge on wet nights, breathing partly through their skin. When rain soaks the leaf litter, the forest unlocks a doorway for creatures that cannot afford to dry out. Salamanders step into the open because moisture turns their whole body into a working surface. Oxygen can pass through their skin, so a damp night is not just comfortable, it is breathable. That is why they appear like quiet miracles on trails after storms, sliding under logs, pausing beside moss, and moving with a patience that feels older than the trees. Their skins also absorb water easily, which is useful and risky at the same time. A chemical on the ground can matter more to them than to many animals because their bodies meet the world directly. On wet nights, they hunt small prey along the forest floor, then vanish again by morning, leaving almost no sign that a hidden population just walked among your footsteps. Frogs can drink water through their bellows, not just mouths. A frog does not need to bend down and sip like a mammal. On the underside of its body is a special patch of skin that can absorb water straight from whatever it is sitting on. That means a damp rock, a muddy bank, or a wet patch of leaves can become a water source without any visible action at all. This changes how frogs live at night. They can stay still, remain alert, and rehydrate at the same time, which is perfect for an animal that depends on quick reactions. It also explains why frogs hug the ground so closely, especially in dry spells. Sitting in the right place can be the difference between comfort and danger. In a night forest, that quiet ability lets frogs wait near ponds, creeks, and puddles like patient guardians, restoring themselves in silence while listening for rivals, predators, and the faint movements of prey. The forest feels calmer when you realize even stillness can be a form of drinking. Snakes sense warm bodies using heat-detecting facial pits. Some snakes do not just see the forest, they feel it glowing. Along their faces are tiny pit organs that can detect infrared heat, allowing them to notice the warmth of a small animal, even when the night hides every shape. In the darkness, a mouse is not only a sound or a shadow, it is a moving pocket of warmth against cooler leaves and soil. This sense creates a second kind of vision, one that does not depend on moonlight. The snake can track where a warm body was moments ago, then adjust its strike with startling precision. It is a reminder that the forest is layered with different animals, experiencing completely different versions of the same night. To us, the ground may look uniform. To a heat-sensing snake, it can look textured with temperature, full of hot spots, fading trails, and sudden opportunities. The darkness does not erase information. It simply changes the kind that matters. Geckos stick to bark using millions of microscopic toe hairs. A gecko can climb a vertical trunk as if gravity is a suggestion. The secret is not glue and not suction. Under each toe are countless microscopic hairs that make close contact with surfaces, creating a gentle attraction at a scale too small to see. This lets a gecko sprint across bark ridges, hang upside down, and stop instantly without slipping. At night, this ability turns the forest into a hunting wall. Insects that hide on trunks and branches can be reached from any angle, and the gecko can approach without the loud scrabble of claws. The feet also release easily because the gecko peels them away in a smooth motion, like lifting tape, then resets them again. It is movement built from tiny physics, repeated in fast rhythm. When you spot a gecko on a tree after dark, you are watching an animal that has turned microscopic structure into freedom, using the forest's vertical space as confidently as we use the ground. Scorpions glow under ultraviolet light, revealing hidden night-eye hunters. A scorpion can spend a whole night unseen, tucked under bark or stones, then suddenly appear as a bright shape under ultraviolet light. The glow comes from compounds in its outer layer, and it can make a secret hunter look like it is painted in neon. No one is completely sure why this glow exists. Some researchers suggest it may help scorpions sense light levels, while others think it could be an accidental byproduct of their biology. Either way, it is one of the strangest transformations in the night world. The scorpion itself is built for patience, often waiting motionless for long stretches, then striking fast when prey wanders close. Seeing its glow feels like catching the forest using a different set of rules, as if the darkness has a hidden ink that only certain light can reveal. It also reminds you that many night creatures are not rare. They are simply good at being invisible until the right perspective turns them visible. Spiders rebuild web slime, recycling silk as a protein meal. A spider web can look permanent, like a little structure the forest always had. For many web builders, it is anything but permanent. After a night of catching insects, a web can be full of damage, debris, and stretched threads. Rather than abandon it, some spiders take it down and eat it. That silk is made of valuable protein, so recycling it is like packing up your own house and turning it into tomorrow's building supplies. Then, often in the same area, the spider lays fresh lines again, tuning the pattern to the space, the wind, and the kinds of prey likely to pass through. This makes the web feel less like a trap and more like a nightly craft project, redesigned over and over. If you have ever walked a path at dusk and seen a new web that was not there earlier, you may be seeing the result of this routine. Night is not just hunting time. It is construction time, cleanup time, and careful planning, all done without a blueprint. Orb weavers can feel prey vibrations like plucked instrument strings. An orb web is not only sticky, it is sensitive. Each strand carries vibrations, and the spider sits like a listener at the center, reading patterns that tell it what just touched the web. A struggling moth sends one kind of signal. A leaf blown into the web sends another. Even the wrong kind of movement can be ignored because the spider is listening for the right rhythm. This makes the web feel like an extension of the spider's senses, a wide net of information spread across open air.
Some orb weavers even build special lines that help them locate prey faster or create a thicker retreat nearby where they can hide while still monitoring the web. At night, when vision is limited, this vibration reading becomes a powerful way to hunt without rushing.
The spider can wait until the message is clear, then move with purpose, crossing threads that would confuse us but feel obvious to it. The web is not just a place, it is a sensor array tuned to catch stories written in tremors. Jumping spiders see color even while hunting in dim light. A jumping spider does not rely on a web to catch prey. It stalks and leaps, guided by vision that is unusually sharp for such a small hunter. Some jumping spiders can see color, and their front-facing eyes give them a focused view that helps them judge distance before launching. That means even in dim conditions, they are not simply reacting, they are aiming. You can watch one pivot its body in tiny steps, lining up a jump like a careful athlete, then springing with surprising accuracy. The leap is not blind. It is calculated, and it can be adjusted at the last instant. This kind of hunting makes the forest feel more alive at night, because it adds a predator that is active, curious, and observant, rather than hidden and passive. Jumping spiders also show behaviors that look almost thoughtful, like pausing to study movement before deciding what to do. The night is full of hunters, but this one hunts with eyes that seem far too advanced for its size, turning tiny scenes on leaves into dramatic chases. Centipedes inject venom through modified legs, not their jaws. A centipede looks like it is made of pure momentum, a long body powered by many legs that can slip through cracks and underbark. Its most surprising feature is its weapon. The venom is delivered through a pair of modified front legs shaped into grasping fangs that pin prey and inject in the same motion. This gives the centipede an advantage in tight spaces, where a jaw bite might be awkward. At night, when small insects and other invertebrates move through the litter, the centipede becomes a fast patrol unit, weaving through tunnels of leaves with sudden bursts of speed. It does not need to be large to be effective. It only needs to arrive first. The venom helps subdue prey quickly, which matters in a world where a meal can escape into a crack in seconds. When you lift a log and see a centipede streak away, you are glimpsing a nocturnal predator designed for close quarters, built to hunt in a maze where reaction time is everything. Millipedes defend themselves with chemicals that smell sharply medicinal. A millipede is not trying to outrun anything. Its strategy is honesty. It advertises that it is a bad meal. When threatened, many millipedes release defensive chemicals that can smell strong and medicinal, a warning that tells predators to reconsider. The message is simple and effective. If you cannot escape quickly, make yourself unpleasant to eat. In the night forest. This allows millipedes to keep doing their real job, which is quietly processing dead plant material. They crawl through damp leaves, breaking down what fell from the canopy, turning bulky litter into smaller pieces that microbes can finish. That makes them part of the forest's recycling system, working in slow motion, while faster animals chase and flee above them. Their many legs move in gentle waves, and their armored bodies resist rough surfaces as they travel. If you see one at night, it can feel like a living piece of the forest floor itself, patient and protected, carrying chemistry as its shield and decomposition as its purpose. Leafcutter ants farm fungus underground, feeding their colony like farmers. Leafcutter ants do not eat the leaves they carry. They cut pieces, march them home, and deliver them into chambers where a carefully tended fungus grows. That fungus is the real food, and the ants treat it like a crop that must be protected and fed the right way. Inside the nest, workers chew the leaves into a pulp, plant it like compost, and remove anything that might threaten the garden. Some ants even carry helpful bacteria on their bodies that can suppress harmful mold, like a living medicine cabinet built into the colony. The result is agriculture happening in darkness, underground, with millions of workers maintaining temperature, humidity, and hygiene without ever seeing the sky. A single leaf on the forest floor can become part of the supply chain, transformed into fungal growth that feeds larvae and sustains the entire community. It is a quiet reminder that farming did not begin with humans. The forest invented it long before we did. Termites build climate-controlled towers that breathe like living lungs. A termite mound can look like a strange sculpture, but it is closer to a machine. Inside, termites maintain stable conditions that protect their colony, and in many species, support fungus that helps break down tough plant material. Heat rises, cool air sinks, and the mound structure guides airflow through corridors like a natural ventilation system. As outside temperatures shift between day and night, the mound can keep its inner spaces within a narrow comfort range, reducing dangerous swings. The termites constantly repair and adjust the walls, opening and sealing tiny passages, tuning the mound the way a builder tunes a house. From the outside, nothing seems to move. Inside, the air is cycling, the humidity is managed, and the colony is working in a protected world of its own. It is one of the most impressive architectural feats in the forest. Built grain by insects that never studied engineering, yet solve it anyway. Beetles navigate by the Milky Way in places truly dark. In a forest far from streetlights, the sky can become a map. Certain beetles have been shown to orient using the bright band of the Milky Way, keeping a steady course by holding a consistent angle to that glowing stripe overhead. That is astonishing because it means the beetle is not just reacting to nearby landmarks. It is using the galaxy as a compass. This matters when the beetle's job is to move quickly away from competition or danger, where wandering in circles would be costly. A stable heading turns urgency into progress. It also means artificial light can scramble that guidance, washing out the sky pattern the beetle depends on. Under real darkness, though, the forest floor and the stars are connected with tiny travelers reading the heavens to make decisions at ground level. When you imagine a beetle steering by starlight, the night stops feeling empty. It starts feeling like a shared space where even small lives are linked to the vastness above. Dung beetles roll straight lines by reading starlight patterns. A dung beetle's race is a getaway. After forming a ball, it needs to leave fast before rivals steal it. So, it picks a direction and commits. Some species can maintain a remarkably straight path at night by using the sky as a reference, including star-like patterns. That means the beetle is not simply pushing and hoping. It is navigating. Researchers have even seen dung beetles climb onto their ball briefly, as if taking a quick sky reading before rolling again, like a traveler checking a compass. The straighter the line, the sooner the beetle reaches a safe spot to bury its prize and protect it. This behavior turns a messy forest moment into a story of precision and urgency, powered by celestial cues. It also shows how the night sky can guide lives that never leave the ground. A beetle rolling a ball in darkness sounds ordinary, until you realize it is using the stars to escape a crowd and secure its future.
Mosquitoes track carbon dioxide plumes like invisible scented rivers. A mosquito does not need to see you clearly to find you. It can follow a drifting ribbon of carbon dioxide from your breath, tracing it through the air like a scent trail that keeps reforming. As it gets closer, it can combine that trail with other cues, including body heat and skin odor, narrowing its search until it finds exactly what it wants. The plume is not a steady arrow. Wind breaks it into patches, so the mosquito flies in a pattern that helps it re-enter the signal each time it slips away. That constant correction is what makes the hunt feel so relentless. In a night forest, this ability guides mosquitoes toward animals hidden under leaves or standing still beside water. It is also why moving air can help you, because strong breezes scatter the plume and make the trail harder to follow. When you realize mosquitoes are tracking invisible gases, the night becomes a place where breath itself can give away your location, even when you think you are perfectly concealed. Moths can detect bat sonar and dive to escape. For a moth, the night is full of hunters, and some of them announce themselves with sound we cannot hear. Many moths have ears tuned to the high frequencies bats use, allowing them to detect danger early enough to react. When that signal appears, the moth may suddenly drop, zigzag, or power dive toward cover, turning a straight flight into chaos. This is not panic. It is strategy. Making movement unpredictable can disrupt a bat's tracking just long enough to survive. Some moths go even further by adding their own clicks, creating interference that can confuse an attacker's targeting. The outcome is an aerial pursuit carried out in darkness, guided by sound beyond human hearing, with both sides making split-second decisions. It is easy to think of moths as delicate, but this is a creature equipped with defenses shaped for a world of echo hunting. The forest at night is not only a place of stealth, it is also a place of countermeasures, refined through countless encounters you never witness. Lacewings hunt aphids, earning the nickname aphid lion larva. A lacewing adult looks delicate, like a drifting green leaf with wings. Its larva is the opposite. The larva is a hunter built for close quarters with curved jaws that can seize aphids and drain them. That is why people call it an aphid lion. On plants near forest edges where aphids gather, these larvae patrol stems and leaf undersides, moving with steady purpose. Some species even disguise themselves by piling bits of debris on their backs, carrying a cloak of part fragments and prey remains that helps them blend in. It is camouflage made from the battlefield. In the dark, this little predator can clear pests that would otherwise weaken leaves and spread plant diseases, making it an unnoticed ally of the forest's growth. The transformation is also part of the wonder. A fierce larva becomes a graceful adult, as if the forest uses one creature to play two roles, first as a hunter, then as a quiet flyer. Once you know that, a lacewing is never just a pretty insect. Again, praying mantises can turn their heads, watching without moving bodies. Most insects cannot swivel their heads much, so their whole body must turn to look. A praying mantis is different. It can rotate its head, tracking movement while staying almost perfectly still. That stillness is the point. The mantis hunts by patience, blending into stems and leaves until prey comes close, then striking with 4 legs that snap shut like a trap. Being able to look around without shifting the body lets it stay hidden while still monitoring the scene. At night, this becomes even more powerful because small movements are easier to miss, and the mantis can wait in silence, watching with an intensity that feels almost unsettling. It is also an animal that can judge distance well enough to strike accurately, turning a quiet perch into an ambush site. When you spot a mantis and it slowly turns its head toward you, it feels personal, like the forest itself has noticed your presence. That moment can make the night feel awake. Stick insects sway like twigs, fooling moonlit eyes. A stick insect survives by becoming a convincing mistake. Its body shape already resembles a twig. But the real trick is movement. When wind stirs branches, the insect sways too, matching the rhythm of its surroundings so closely that predators overlook it as just another part of the plant. Under moonlight, where shapes soften and details blur, that imitation becomes even more effective. The insect is not hiding behind something. It is hiding in plain sight by copying the forest's natural motion. Some stick insects also choose positions that strengthen the illusion, aligning their bodies with stems, angling their legs like small offshoots, and remaining still for long stretches. The result is a creature that turns the forest's own behavior into protection. It is a reminder that camouflage is not only about color. It is about timing and confidence, about knowing that if you move like the world around you, you can disappear inside it. Once you notice a stick insect, it can feel as if the forest has revealed a secret and then dared you to find it again. Some trees release more scent at night to deter insects. In daylight, a tree has to balance sunlight, water loss, and the constant attention of hungry mouths. After dark, another strategy becomes louder in the only language some insects truly respect: chemistry. Many trees and shrubs release aromatic compounds that can make leaves less appealing, confuse an insect's ability to locate a meal, or even attract the enemies of the insects doing the chewing. It is not perfume for our benefit. It is a defensive broadcast that can drift through the understory when air settles and humidity rises. A caterpillar, feeding quietly, can trigger this response, turning one bite into a wider warning. The astonishing part is how targeted it can feel, like a tree choosing the right message for the right problem. You can walk through a forest at night and catch sudden waves of scent that were not obvious hours earlier. Not because the forest is romantic, but because it is negotiating survival in real time. Night-blooming flowers open after dusk to meet moth pollinators. Some flowers wait all day with their petals held back, saving their effort for the hours when different visitors arrive. After sunset, they open with purpose, often releasing stronger fragrance and presenting pale petals that stand out in low light. Their main partners are often moths, which patrol the night using scent and subtle visual cues. A moth does not need a bright garden. It needs a signal that says, "Food is here now." These flowers time everything to that moment, offering nectar deep enough that only certain tons can reach it, guiding contact with pollen along the way. The plant is not guessing. It is matching a schedule that is repeated for countless nights. This changes how you picture pollination. It is not only bees in sunlight, it is also quiet night flights, wings dusted with pollen, moving between blossoms you might never notice. If you have ever smelled a sweet bloom in darkness and could not see where it came from,
You were likely standing near a flower that designed itself for the night shift. Moonflowers unfurl rapidly, turning darkness into a timed invitation. A moonflower can seem almost theatrical because it does not open slowly over hours. It can unfurl in minutes, petals loosening and spreading as if the plant is taking a breath. That speed matters because the night window is short. The flower is aiming for specific visitors, and it wants to be ready at the right moment, not late. The bloom is often bright against darkness, and the scent can intensify as it opens, announcing itself to night pollinators that are already moving. Watching one open feels like catching a hidden mechanism in the natural world, something usually missed because it happens when most people are indoors. There is also risk in such a bold display. A flower that opens widely becomes easier to find, which is exactly the point. But it also has to handle cooler temperatures and moisture changes that arrive with night air. The moonflower accepts that challenge for one reason. The right guest will arrive, and the plant wants the door open when it does. Cacti bloom at night to avoid daytime water loss. In arid places, daytime can be punishing, with heat pulling moisture from every exposed surface. Some cacti solve this by saving their most delicate work for the dark. Their flowers open at night when temperatures drop. Humidity can rise, and the air is gentler on petals and pollen. This timing is also an invitation to nocturnal pollinators, including bats and night-flying insects, which can travel long distances between scattered plants. A cactus bloom can be large and fragrant, like a signal flare that does not rely on bright color alone. Because cacti may live far apart, a night visitor that can move quickly becomes valuable, connecting one plant to another across open terrain. The flower itself is often short-lived, sometimes lasting only a single night, which makes the whole event feel urgent, like the cactus is spending a stored fortune of water and energy for a brief chance at reproduction. In the darkness, the desert does not quiet down. It simply switches to a different set of agreements. Some plants fold leaves at night, like a slow prayer. As evening deepens, certain plants begin to change posture. Leaves that were spread wide during the day slowly lift or fold, altering the plant's shape until it looks like it is closing itself for the night. This movement is not sleep in the way animals sleep, but it is a deliberate shift driven by internal timing and light sensing. Folding can reduce exposure to cold night air, limit moisture loss, or even make it harder for nighttime herbivores to get a comfortable bite. In some species, changing leaf angles can also reduce the chance of damage from heavy dew or overnight rain, helping water run off instead of pooling. What makes it feel magical is the pace. It is slow enough that you rarely notice unless you check twice, yet consistent enough that it happens again and again like a ritual. A forest at night is full of motion that does not rush. Leaves can move, stems can adjust, and entire plants can reposition themselves without a sound, responding to darkness as if it is a signal in itself. Tomato often open after dark, sipping carbon dioxide safely. A leaf is not sealed. It has tiny pores called stemata that act like valves, opening to take in carbon dioxide and closing to reduce water loss. For many plants, daytime is a trade-off. Opening stow brings in what photosynthesis needs, but it also lets precious water escape. At night, the pressure eases. Cooler temperatures and calmer air can reduce evaporation, allowing some plants to open their stomato more safely and gather carbon dioxide without paying as high a water cost. In certain plants, this nighttime intake is stored and used later when sunlight returns, letting them keep stomata more closed during the heat of day.
It is a quiet strategy that makes the leaf feel less like a simple surface and more like a breathing device with a schedule. In the dark, the plant is still working, not making sugars yet, but preparing, banking resources, and managing risk. The night does not pause plant life. It lets it negotiate. Roots keep growing at night, exploring soil like blind fingers. Roots do not chase light, so their world is always dark, but night can still matter to them. When the surface cools, the plant often loses less water through its leaves, which can help maintain the internal pressure that supports growth. That allows root tips to keep pushing, extending into tiny gaps between grains of soil and around stones, feeling for moisture and nutrients. The growing tip is a sensitive place, releasing substances that influence nearby microbes and responding to chemical hints in the ground. A root is not digging randomly. It is sampling its surroundings and choosing where to invest.
This becomes especially important in a forest, where water can be patchy and competition is intense. Roots may slip toward damp pockets, follow decaying organic matter, or cluster where nutrients are richer. By morning, you will not see the change. Yet the plant has quietly extended its reach. Night after night, that slow exploration builds the hidden architecture that keeps the forest standing. Above ground, the forest seems still. Below it is searching. Mycorrhizal fungi link trees, moving nutrients between neighbors. Beneath the forest floor, fungi can weave a network of fine threads that connect to tree roots. In this partnership, the fungi can help gather water and minerals that are hard for roots to reach. And in return, it receives sugars made by the tree. What makes it feel like a secret society is how interconnected it can become. Threads may link multiple plants, creating pathways where resources can move depending on supply and demand. A shaded seedling might receive support that helps it survive. A larger tree might gain access to nutrients pulled from a wider area. This is not kindness. It is a living trade system that benefits the fungus too, because a healthier forest means more stable partners. Night matters indirectly because plant sugars are built during daylight and then transported and used around the clock, including after sunset, fueling ongoing exchanges below ground. When you imagine trees as isolated, you miss the deeper story. They can be part of a connected community with fungi acting as the brokers. The forest at night is not only what moves in shadows, it is also what flows invisibly underground. Fungi recycle fallen wood, turning logs into future soil. A fallen log can look like an ending, but in a forest, it is often a beginning that starts in darkness. Fungi move in first, sending threads through cracks in bark, then breaking down tough wood fibers that most animals cannot digest. As the log softens, it becomes a moist shelter for insects, worms, and countless microbes, each adding their own work to the slow transformation. Over time, the log can hold water like a sponge, feeding nearby plants during dry spells and creating a safer nursery for seedlings that take root on its surface. This is why a decaying log is sometimes called a nurse log. It is not sentimental, it is practical. The wood becomes a platform, a reservoir, and eventually part of the soil itself. At night, when humidity rises and temperatures drop, the surface of the log can stay damp longer, giving fungi and microbes better conditions to keep working. The forest does not waste its fallen giants. It converts them patiently into the next generation's foundation. Lichens keep photosynthesizing in low light when moisture returns. A lichen is not one organism. It is a partnership, usually between a fungus and the photosynthetic partner such as algae. Together they can survive in places that seem too harsh or too bare, clinging to bark, rocks, and old wood. Lichens can dry out and pores, then revive quickly when moisture returns, absorbing water from rain, fog, or heavy dew. That ability makes night important in a subtle way. Even when daylight is gone, a damp lichen can still take advantage of low light conditions and keep its internal processes going, especially during twilight, moonlit nights, or under a canopy where brightness is already muted. It is not fast. It is persistent. Lichens grow slowly, but they are reliable pioneers, gradually breaking down surfaces and creating tiny habitats for microlife. Spotting lichen on a tree is like seeing time made visible, a living crust that records environmental conditions across years. In the night forest, when surfaces grow moist again, lichens quietly awaken and resume their long work. Dew forms countless tiny lenses that can focus moonlight onto leaves. On clear nights, dew does more than make the forest glimmer. Each droplet acts as a curved surface, bending and concentrating whatever light is present, including moonlight and starlight. Up close, a damp leaf becomes a field of miniature magnifiers, turning faint nighttime glow into sharp points and scattered sparks. For tiny organisms living on plant surfaces, that change matters. A film of moisture can shift temperature, slow drying winds, and create micropockets where bacteria, spores, and microscopic grazers can move and feed. Dew also acts like a delivery system, pulling trace particles from the air and settling them onto leaves, bark, and moss. When morning arrives, many plants can absorb that moisture directly through their surfaces or guided toward the soil below. What looks like a simple nighttime dampness is actually a temporary environment built bead by bead that changes how the forest breathes, trades, and survives between sunset and sunrise. Night air cools, creating fog that waters forests without rain. Sometimes, a forest drinks from the sky without a single drop falling. When the ground releases heat after sunset, the air near it can cool enough for water vapor to condense into fog. That fog drifts between trunks and branches, and as it brushes past needles, leaves, and moss, it can deposit moisture like a quiet rain you barely notice. In cloud forests and coastal woodlands, this can be a major source of water, sustaining plants through dry seasons when storms are rare. Some trees and shrubs are shaped in ways that help them capture this moisture, letting droplets gather and drip down to their roots. The forest floor benefits too, because a damp night slows evaporation and keeps soils from crusting over. Fog also changes the soundscape, softening distant noise and making close sounds feel more intimate. The next time you see mist curling through trees, it may not be a decoration. It may be a nightly delivery, turning air into water and silence into survival. Forests can make their own weather, by releasing water vapor. A forest is not just sitting beneath the atmosphere, it participates in it. Through transpiration, plants release water vapor from their leaves, and over large areas, that vapor can build into humidity that influences clouds and rainfall patterns. In other words, the forest can help load the sky with the ingredients for future rain. This becomes especially powerful in dense regions where countless leaves act like pumps, lifting water from the soil and sending it back upward as invisible vapor. As that moisture rises, it can cool and condense, forming clouds that shade the ground and reduce heat stress, which then helps the forest keep working. It is a feedback loop that makes the forest feel less like scenery and more like infrastructure for the climate around it. Even at night, this process can continue in changing ways, with cooling air and shifting winds redistributing moisture above the canopy. The weather is not only happening to the forest. In many places, the forest is helping write the forecast. Cold air sinks into valleys, forming hidden frost pockets. On calm nights, cold air behaves like water. It flows downhill and pools in low places, settling into valleys and hollows where it can linger until morning. That is how a frost pocket forms, a place where temperatures drop lower than the surrounding slopes, even when the wider forest stays above freezing. This can shape what grows where. Tender seedlings may struggle in these cold basins, while hardier plants gain an advantage. It can also affect insects and amphibians that time their activity to temperature, pushing them to the edges of the pocket or delaying movement until conditions improve. For animals, these cold sinks become invisible terrain, like a chilly lake you only feel when you step into it. A hiker might walk downhill and suddenly notice breath turning visible, fingers cooling faster, and grass stiffening with frost, while the ridge above remains mild. The forest at night is not uniform. It has temperature landscapes, and valleys can hold cold the way caves hold darkness. Tree trunks store heat, releasing it slowly after sunset. A tree trunk is more than support wood. It is thermal mass, a solid body that absorbs warmth during the day and releases it gradually once the sun is gone. This gentle leak of heat can soften nighttime temperature drops right around the bark, creating a slightly warmer boundary layer in the air. For small creatures, that difference can be meaningful. Insects may cling to bark where the chill is less severe. Tiny spiders and overwintering larvae can benefit from a steadier microclimate. Even mosses and lichens on the trunk experience a different night than plants out on exposed leaves. This heat buffering also helps trees themselves, reducing the shock of rapid cooling that can stress tissues in certain conditions. If you place a hand on the trunk after dusk, it can feel surprisingly alive. Not because it is generating heat, but because it is releasing stored warmth like a slow exhale. The forest holds on to daytime longer than you think, and trunks are part of how it does it. Wood cacks at night as temperatures shift its fibers. A quiet forest can still be noisy if you listen for the right kind of sound. As temperatures change after sunset, wood expands and contracts, and that movement can release as creaks, pops, and soft snapping noises. It is not always animals. Sometimes it is physics. A branch adjusting its tension, a trunk settling under its own weight, or a dead limb shifting as it cools. Moisture plays a role too. When humidity rises, wood can absorb water and swell. When air dries, it can tighten again, These subtle changes build stress inside fibers and joints, and eventually something gives just enough to make a sound. The effect can feel eerie because it happens when visibility is low and the imagination wants a cause. But there is a calm truth to it. The forest is a structure made of living materials, constantly responding to temperature and water. Night reveals that response because everything else is quieter. Those creaks are the forest adjusting itself like a ship settling in the dark. Some pine cones open and close with humidity, like living hinges. A pine cone can behave like a tiny machine without any nerves or muscles. Its scales are built from layers that swell differently depending on moisture. When the air is dry, the scales pull apart and the cone opens, making it easier for seeds to escape and ride the wind. When the air is damp, the scales tighten and the cone closes, protecting seeds from falling into wet conditions where they might not travel far or could be damaged. This means a pine cone is quietly reading humidity and responding with movement that looks deliberate. You can even see it happen if you bring a cone indoors, watching it change shape as the air dries. In the forest at night, when humidity often rises, cones may close again, as if the trees are packing away their future until conditions improve. It is a reminder that plant strategies can be mechanical as well as chemical. A pine cone does not need to think to make a good decision. It only needs the right design. Leaf litter insulates soil, buffering nightly temperature swings. The forest floor is often covered in a soft layer of fallen leaves and needles, and that layer acts like a blanket. It traps pockets of air, slows heat loss from the ground, and reduces how sharply soil temperatures swing between day and night. That stability matters because so much life depends on the soil staying within a workable range. Microbes continue breaking down organic matter. Roots keep functioning, and small animals can move through the underlayer without facing sudden cold. Leaf litter also holds moisture, shading the soil from drying winds and slowing evaporation. When rain or fog arrives, the litter absorbs and releases water gradually, preventing the surface from turning harsh and crusty. It is easy to see leaves as debris, but in a forest, they are infrastructure. They protect the living skin of the ground. At night, that protection becomes especially important because exposed soil can cool quickly. With litter in place, the forest keeps its underground world steadier, warmer, and more hospitable, while the air above shifts and chills. A single fallen tree becomes a nursery for hundreds of lives. When a tree falls, it does not leave the forest. It changes roles. The log begins to soften as fungi and microbes move in, and that softening invites insects that tunnel, chew, and lay eggs inside protected chambers. Cavities under bark become shelter for beetles, centipedes, and small amphibians that need damp hiding places. As the wood breaks down, it holds water like a sponge, creating a safer surface for mosses to spread and for seedlings to root where competition from grasses is lower. In time, you can find a line of young plants growing right along the length of the log, using it as a moist platform above the ground. Birds may forage along it, peeling bark for larvae, and small mammals may use it as cover while moving. The fallen tree becomes a miniature neighborhood with floors, walls, and food. What looks like an ending
is actually a beginning that supports life in many forms, often for years.
At night, it can feel especially alive as hidden residents emerge and the loch becomes a quiet stage of movement. Streams glow faintly when stirred, if bioluminescent microbes are present. In certain places, water can carry living light. If bioluminescent microbes are present, a sudden splash, a swirling stick, or even a passing fish can trigger a brief glow that appears like liquid stars. The light comes from chemical reactions inside the organisms, often linked to stress or movement, and it can turn a dark stream edge into a moment of surprise. It does not happen in most forest creeks, which is part of what makes it so memorable when it does. When the glow appears, it can feel like the water is responding to touch, revealing invisible life that was always there. This phenomenon is more common in marine settings, but it can occur in fresh water under certain conditions, especially where the right organisms are present and the environment supports them. If you ever see a faint shimmer in disturbed water at night, the most astonishing part is the scale. A single spark is a single organism. A glowing swirl can be thousands, all lighting at once. The stream becomes a messenger, showing that even darkness can contain its own kind of brightness. Nocturnal birds navigate using stars and the Earth's magnetic field. For a night-flying bird, the world has two compasses running at once. One is overhead, where star patterns rotate in predictable ways. The other is inside, a magnetic sense that can provide direction even when clouds hide the sky. Young birds learn the star map by watching the night turn, building a reference that later helps them hold a steady heading. The magnetic sense adds a backup, especially useful over dark forests, open water, or unfamiliar terrain where landmarks disappear. What makes this feel almost unreal is the scale. A small body can lift into darkness and still know which way is forward. When conditions change, winds shift, or the horizon vanishes, the bird does not need to panic. It can recalibrate using cues that humans rarely notice. The night becomes a navigable space, not a void, and migration becomes possible because the sky itself contains instructions. Migrating songbirds call softly at night, keeping airborne contact. High above the treetops, migrating sunbirds often travel in darkness, and they do not do it in silence. Many give short, quiet calls while flying, sounds that can help birds stay loosely connected, avoid collisions, and adjust course together. These calls are not big performances like daytime songs. They are brief check-ins, small signals that say, "I am here and I am moving." On calm nights, people on the ground can sometimes hear these faint notes drifting down like distant needles of sound. The forest below may seem still, yet there is a flow of travelers overhead, using voice as a safety tool. What is especially fascinating is how the calls can change with conditions. When visibility drops, when flocks mix, when the sky becomes confusing, the night can become more talkative. It turns migration into something social rather than solitary. A moving network, held together by tiny sounds in the dark. Nightjars camouflage so well, they look like bark itself. A nightjar can be sitting in plain view and still be nearly impossible to see. Its feathers carry mottled patterns that match leaf litter, cracked wood, and shadowed ground so closely that your eyes slide past it. During the day, it often rests motionless, trusting the disguise, then becomes active at dusk when flying insects rise. The way it hunts adds to the mystery. It can sweep through openings with a wide mouth, catching insects on the wing, then return to a perch without announcing itself. Some nightjars even choose resting spots on branches or the ground that reinforce the illusion, aligning their bodies with the lines and textures around them. This makes the forest feel full of hidden occupants, not because they are rare, but because they are expertly blended. When a nightjar finally moves, the shock is not its speed. It is the realization that your idea of empty space was wrong. Woodcocks perform twilight sky dances, spiraling with twittering wings. A woodcock can turn a quiet clearing into a stage. As twilight arrives, it may launch into the air and begin a looping, spiraling display flight, rising and then descending in a controlled pattern. The sound is part of the performance, with distinct calls and wing noises that can create a thin, musical twitter as air passes through specialized feathers. The point is courtship, but the effect is larger than that. It is a reminder that some forest rituals are timed to the border between light and dark, when visibility is low enough to feel safe, yet bright enough for a viewer to notice movement overhead. The woodcock returns to the ground and repeats sometimes again and again, as if testing the night for the right response. It is easy to imagine forests as purely practical places. Then an animal rises into fading light and dances, making a deliberate spectacle. In the hour when most creatures are becoming quiet, loons call across lakes, using night air to carry sound farther. A loon's voice can travel astonishing distances, especially at night when air layers can become more stable and sound can carry cleanly over water. The call is not random noise. It can be a way to announce presence, maintain spacing, and keep contact across a dark lake where seeing another bird is difficult. On still nights, a single wail can seem to come from everywhere at once, echoing off shorelines and slipping into the trees beyond the water's edge. That effect can feel haunting, but there is a practical core to it. A lake at night is full of uncertainty, and sound becomes the safest way to communicate without moving closer. The loon's calls can also help define territory during breeding season, turning the lake into a mapped space made of voices rather than borders. You can see when you hear a loon after dark, you are listening to a bird using acoustics as a navigation tool, shaping the night with sound. Owls have asymmetrical ears that locate prey with precision. Some owls have ears positioned slightly unevenly on the head, not as a mistake, but as an advantage. This asymmetry helps the owl compare tiny differences in the timing and loudness of sound arriving at each ear. With that information, it can determine direction and even height, building a three-dimensional sense of where a noise originated. The owl's facial disc, that rounded face, helps channel sound toward its ears, concentrating the night the way a dish gathers a signal. The result is a hunter that can remain perfectly still and yet know what is happening beneath grass or leaves. A faint rustle becomes a coordinate. A brief scrape becomes a position. The owl then rotates its head with calm precision, lining up a strike on a place you would never even notice. This does not make the forest cruel. It makes it exact. In darkness, survival often belongs to the creature that can measure the world without relying on sight. Barn owls are able to hunt in near total darkness using hearing alone. A barn owl's flight can be so quiet, it feels like it is gliding through a dream. Soft feather edges reduce the noise of air moving over the wings, which matters because the owl needs to hear while it hunts. In very low light, it can rely heavily on sound to find prey, listening for movement in grass or along the edges of fields and forest openings. The owl may hover briefly, tilt its head, and then drop in a clean, controlled descent. What makes this truly captivating is how little drama it needs. There is no chase you can follow. There is only a sudden decision and a sudden strike. The owl's heart and muscles are doing intense work, yet the scene can look calm. Afterward, it may swallow prey whole and later regurgitate a pellet of bones and fur, leaving a record of the night's hunting in a compact package. An animal that can read darkness by sound alone turned the night into usable space, not an obstacle. Great horned owls can take prey heavier than they are. A great horned owl carries a reputation for power, and it earns it. Its grip can be extraordinarily strong, allowing it to seize and hold struggling prey with a force that surprises even experienced observers. Because of that strength, it can sometimes take animals that rival its own weight, especially when the prey is caught off balance and the owl uses momentum and surprise. This changes the hierarchy of the night. Many creatures that feel safe from smaller hunters must still respect an owl that can arrive silently from above. Great horned owls are also adaptable, living in many habitats and adjusting their hunting to what is available, which makes them steady presences across wide regions. Their deep hoots can define a nighttime landscape, signaling ownership and presence without any visible movement. If you have ever heard that low, confident call and felt a shift in the air, it is because you are hearing a predator that does not need to advertise speed. It advertises certainty. Some bats hibernate in caves, slowing heartbeats to survive winter. When winter removes insects from the air, many bats face a simple problem with a hard answer. They cannot eat enough to stay active, so they shift into hibernation, often choosing caves or other sheltered places where temperature and humidity remain relatively stable. Inside that stillness, their metabolism drops dramatically. Heartbeats slow, breathing becomes infrequent, body temperature falls closer to the surrounding air. This is not sleep in the cozy sense, it is energy math, a way to stretch stored fat across months when hunting is impossible. The cave becomes a savings account, protecting the bat from wind, sudden freezes, and frequent disturbance. Yet, hibernation is not a perfect pause. Bats may occasionally rouse, burn precious energy, then settle again, which is why calm, undisturbed shelters matter so much. Thinking about a bat hanging through winter, alive but almost stopped, makes the forest feel larger than seasons. Night is not only an active world, it is also a world that can wait. Vampire bats share meals, feeding hungry friends by regurgitation. For a vampire bat, missing a meal can be dangerous because blood digestion and energy needs run on a tight schedule. That pressure has led to one of the most striking social behaviors in the night world. Individuals sometimes share food with roostmates by regurgitating a portion of what they consumed, effectively rescuing a hungry bat that failed to feed. This is not charity without pattern. Sharing tends to occur among bats that recognize each other and have a history of cooperation, building trust over time. In the darkness of a roost, a meal becomes more than nutrition. It becomes social glue. The group benefits because helping a neighbor today increases the chance of being helped later, and because stable roostmates make a safer community. It is a reminder that night animals are not all solitary shadows. Some live inside relationships, memories, and quiet bargains. When you imagine a bat feeding another bat, you are seeing survival shaped not only by teeth and flight, but by connection. Wolves and coyotes sometimes avoid each other by timing activity. In the same forest, two hunters can share space without constantly fighting, simply by using different hours. Where wolves are present, coyotes often shift their routines, becoming more active when wolves are less likely to be nearby, or choosing different travel windows along the same valleys and ridges. This is not kindness, it is risk management. A coyote that blunders into a wolf encounter can pay a heavy price. So the safest strategy is to treat time like a fence. The forest night becomes divided into appointments, with one predator claiming certain stretches of darkness and another slipping through later. Sometimes this timing changes with seasons, prey movement, or the presence of pups that need extra protection. What looks to us like a simple night landscape is actually a schedule shaped by tension and memory. You are not only walking through trees, you are walking through invisible calendars that animals keep with their bodies. Small rodents change routes nightly to confuse predators. A mouse that repeats the same path becomes predictable, and in a night forest, predictability is an invitation. Many small rodents reduce danger by varying their routes, switching which logs they run along, which tunnel gaps they use, and which cover patches they trust on any given night. This makes it harder for predators to set up reliable ambush points. The rodent is not trying to be clever in a human sense, it is practicing survival through uncertainty. Even a small detour can matter, because scent, sound, and footprints can build patterns that predators learn. By changing routes, rodents keep those patterns blurry. This also reshapes the forest's hidden traffic. Seed carrying, foraging, and quick dashes between shelter spots become scattered across the landscape instead of concentrated in one corridor. If you ever watch a mouse appear and vanish in different places along the same trail, you may be witnessing a strategy that turns randomness into armor. In the dark, being hard to predict can be the strongest shield. Many insects avoid moonlight, staying safer in shadow. Moonlight can feel gentle to us, but for many insects, it is exposure. Bright nights make movement easier for visual hunters, so some insects change behavior when the moon is strong, staying closer to cover, flying lower, or delaying activity until clouds or canopy shade reduces the glow. The forest becomes a patchwork of safe zones, with deeper shadows functioning like shelter. This is one reason a moonlit clearing can seem strangely quiet compared to a darker corridor under branches. Insects that do move may hug trunks, leaf undersides, and thick shrubs using structure as protection. It is a reminder that light is not always a gift. Sometimes it is danger. The moon also shifts night contrast, sharpening silhouettes and making wings and bodies easier to spot. So, insects respond by becoming more careful, not less. When you notice fewer fluttering shapes on a bright night, it may not mean the forest is empty. It may mean it is hiding intelligently, choosing darkness within darkness. Bright artificial lights can disrupt nocturnal pollination networks. A single street lamp near a forest edge can pull the night out of alignment. Many nocturnal pollinators navigate using natural light cues, and bright artificial lights can draw them away from flowers, trap them in exhausting loops, or concentrate them in places where they are more easily eaten. Meanwhile, night-blooming plants that rely on moths or other dark-hour visitors may receive fewer pollination trips, even if the flowers open perfectly on schedule. The result is subtle but important. Fewer visits can mean fewer seeds,
which can ripple through plant populations over time. Light can also change when some insects choose to fly, shifting their activity into riskier hours or reducing it altogether. Unlike a storm, this disruption is steady night after night, rewriting behaviors through repetition. What makes it feel unsettling is how quiet it is. The lamp does not chase anything. It simply stays on, and the forest reorganizes around it. In a world built on darkness as a habitat, artificial brightness is not neutral. It is a new force that reshapes relationships. Moon phases can change predator success, reshaping nightly behavior. The moon is not only a light in the sky, it can be a dial that changes the arts. On brighter nights, some predators hunt more effectively because they can see better, while others lose an advantage if their prey can detect them sooner. Prey animals respond by shifting when they move, how far they travel from cover, and which habitats they choose. This means the night does not have one stable rule book. It has phases. A forest under a thin crescent can feel like a different arena than a forest under a wide, bright moon. Even small changes in illumination can influence whether a chase begins, whether an ambush succeeds, or whether an animal decides it is safer to wait. Over time, these choices create patterns that repeat every month. Like a natural tide of risk, the most fascinating part is how many lives are tuned to this rhythm without ever looking up.
The sky changes and the forest answers, not with words, but with movement. Some animals use the full moon as a traveling lantern. For certain night travelers, a bright moon is a useful tool. It can reveal obstacles, outline trails, and make longer journeys possible without constant stops to reassess the terrain. Animals that need to cover distance may take advantage of these bright windows, using moonlit hours to cross open areas, follow shorelines, or move between feeding and resting sites more efficiently. The moon becomes a kind of natural headler that costs no energy to carry. This does not mean the night becomes safe. It means it becomes usable in a different way. Under strong moonlight, landmarks sharpen. A fallen log is easier to step over. A narrow path is easier to hold. Even the edges of water or steep slopes can be judged more accurately. In forests with broken canopy, moonbeams can create lit corridors that shift as the moon moves, offering brief, clear routes through tangled places. When you picture a night animal choosing to travel on a bright night, you are seeing planning, not luck. The forest offers light sometimes, and some animals spend it like a resource. Others hide more during full moons, treating light as danger. For many animals, moonlight does not feel like help. It feels like being seen. A full moon can sharpen outlines and reduce the protective blur of darkness, making small bodies more noticeable to owls, foxes, and other hunters that rely on vision. So, some prey animals respond by limiting movement, feeding closer to cover, or waiting for darker hours before crossing open ground. The forest then develops a different mood. It can seem quieter, not because fewer animals exist, but because more of them are choosing stillness. This choice has consequences. Less foraging time can mean more hunger later. So, the decision to hide is a trade, not a comfort. Some species compensate by feeding more on darker nights, creating a rhythm where risk and appetite take turns. Moonlight can also change where animals feel safe, pushing them into denser brush, deeper hollows, or closer to trunks that break up their silhouettes. When the moon is bright and the forest feels strangely paused, you may be witnessing caution in action. The light is beautiful, but beauty can be exposed. Night rain awakens earthworms, pulling them onto the surface to feed. After rain, the forest floor can come alive in a way you can almost feel under your shoes. Earthworms often surface when the ground is wet because moisture makes it safer for them to travel and feed without drying out. Wet conditions also allow them to move across the surface more easily, reaching new patches of leaf litter and organic material. This matters because earthworms are quiet recyclers, pulling dead plant matter into the soil and breaking it down into forms other life can use. A rainy night can turn that work into a busy shift, with worms appearing along paths near puddles and beside logs where detritus collects. Their movement also attracts attention. Many animals, from birds at dawn to night hunters, take advantage of this surface activity as a reliable meal opportunity. What looks like a simple rain event is actually a timing signal releasing a hidden workforce from underground. If you have ever seen a damp path dotted with worms after dark, you were watching the forest respond to water with immediate motion, turning rainfall into feeding time. Snails travel farther at night, protected from drying air. A snail carries its home, but it still has a problem. Its body can lose water easily, and dry air can turn travel into danger. Night helps by lowering temperature and often raising humidity, creating safer conditions for long, slow journeys. This is when snails can leave hiding places and cross larger stretches of ground to find food, mates, or better shelter. Their pace is steady, but their progress adds up when the environment stops trying to dry them out. You can sometimes find them climbing stems and trunks at night, taking advantage of moisture on surfaces and avoiding the harsher exposure of daytime. The trail they leave behind is not just slime. It reduces friction, helps them glide over rough textures, and can even retain moisture along the path. The forest benefits from these movements too, because snails help process decaying plant material and influence which fungi and algae grow on surfaces. They are slow, but they are part of the nightly circulation. In the dark, the forest is not only fast hunters and swift wings. It is also quiet travelers making careful distance. Slugs leave chemical trails that other slugs can follow. A slug may look like it is simply wandering, but its movement can leave information behind. As it glides, it deposits a mucus trail that can contain chemical cues, and other slugs can detect and follow these paths. This can help them locate food, find suitable shelter, or even move toward potential mates without having to search blindly across the forest floor. The trail also benefits the slug that produced it, creating a smoother path over rough soil, bark, or stone. On damp nights, these trails can persist long enough to guide movement, like faint, glowing lines. Except the glow exists only for those who can sense it with their bodies. This turns the forest floor into a web of gentle pathways that appear and disappear with moisture. It is communication that resembles residue, a message written in a substance most people would prefer to avoid. Yet for slugs, it serves as both a navigational aid and a social connection. When you notice a slug at night, you are seeing a creature that leaves a map behind as it moves, connecting its present steps to future visitors. The forest's soil breathes carbon dioxide, rising more at night. After sunset, the forest floor can quietly fill with an invisible tide. Roots keep respiring, microbes keep digesting, and both release carbon dioxide as they do their work. When the air goes still, that gas can linger close to the ground instead of mixing upward, especially in low spots where cool air settles.
That is why scientists often measure soil respiration at night as well as day, because the balance shifts with temperature, moisture, and calm conditions. A warm, damp evening can make the soil feel almost alive in a way you cannot see, only detect with instruments. It is not a sign of trouble on its own. It is the cost of running a living system that is constantly rebuilding itself from dead leaves and sugars made earlier. The forest is never off.
Even in darkness, the ground is quietly exhaling. Underground, roots trade sugars for minerals with fungal partners. A root tip is not just a straw for water, it is a trading post. Fungal threads can reach into tiny soil pores that roots cannot enter, gathering nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, then delivering them at the root's surface. In return, the plant pays in sugars, a currency produced in leaves and shipped downward like night to payroll. This exchange can be surprisingly selective. Plants can send more carbon to partners that deliver more nutrients and reduce support to those that do not, creating a kind of biological marketplace. The fungi benefit too, because sugar lets them expand their network and survive lean times. What makes this fascinating is that the negotiation happens without brains, yet it still has consequences. A seedling in poor soil can survive because its fungal partners widen its reach. A mature tree can grow faster because it is outsourcing mining to an underground workforce. When you walk through a forest at night, you are above a commerce system that never closes. Fallen leaves feed microbes that power the entire forest cycle. A leaf that drops to the ground is not litter, it is a meal. Microbes move in first, coating the surface and beginning the slow work of breaking complex plant material into smaller pieces. That process releases nutrients back into the soil, turning last season's growth into next season's supply. The leaf layer also becomes a buffet for tiny grazers that feed on the microbes themselves, creating a whole food web built on decay. If you could shrink down and stand inside that layer at night, you would find constant activity, enzymes dissolving structures, microscopic bodies dividing and spreading, and chemical byproducts drifting through damp air pockets. This is how forests avoid drowning in their own success. Trees make vast amounts of organic matter. Then the ground community dismantles it and recycles it. The forest does not just grow, it reuses. Fallen leaves are the fuel that keeps that loop turning. Rotting logs can stay warm inside from microbial activity. A decaying log can feel like a quiet object, but inside it can run like a small furnace. Microbes breaking down wood release heat as they metabolize. The same basic reason compost piles can warm up. The log structure helps trap that warmth, especially when the outer surface stays damp and insulated by bark or moss. For small creatures, that warmer interior can be a refuge on chilly nights, a place where larvae, beetles, and other residents can keep functioning when the air outside cools. It also speeds decomposition because many microbes work faster in slightly warmer conditions, creating a self-reinforcing pocket of activity. If you crack open a rotting log, the smell is part of the evidence, earthy and intense, like the forest's hidden kitchen. What looks like dead wood is actually a busy reactor converting tough fibers into soil ingredients while generating a faint, steady warmth that you would never expect from something lying still. Some beetle larvae live in wood for years before emerging. A beetle can spend most of its life as a hidden worker inside a tree. Certain larvae tumble through wood for years, chewing slowly, growing gradually, and turning dense fibers into fine debris as they go.
Outside, seasons spin past. Inside, the larvae stays in a stable world of darkness and sapscent, protected from many predators and weather extremes. This long childhood is not laziness. Wood is a tough food source, and extracting enough energy takes time. The payoff comes later when the adult finally emerges, sometimes leaving neat exit holes as quiet signatures on dead trunks or fallen branches.
That emergence can feel sudden, but it is the end of a long project that started years earlier. When you hear a faint tapping in a log at night, it might not be imagination. It could be a lather, moving, chewing, and reshaping the interior of the forest, one bite at a time, preparing for a future it has not seen. Cicadas spend years underground, then rise in synchronized waves. Some cicadas live most of their lives as underground nymphs, feeding on root fluids and growing in darkness for years before they ever see the sky. Then, in the right ear, a huge number emerge within a short window, climbing trunks, splitting their skins, and becoming loud adults almost overnight. This timing is not random. The underground world has cues, including soil temperature patterns that help trigger the final push upward. The advantage of emerging together is brutal and brilliant. Predators cannot eat them all. With so many bodies at once, enough cicadas survive to mate and lay eggs, even if many are taken. The forest changes during these waves. The ground is full of exit holes, the trunks hold empty shells, and the air fills with sound that can dominate daylight and dusk. It feels like the forest has flipped a switch. Then, after a short adult season, the chorus fades, and the next generation begins its long wait below. Glowworms are larvae, not worms, using light to lure prey. What people call a glowworm is often the larval stage of an insect, and the glow is not decoration, it is a trap. The larva produces light from its body to attract small insects that mistake the glow for safety or food. In some species, the larva even uses sticky threads or ambush tactics to seize what arrives, turning curiosity into a meal. This makes the forest night feel like it contains its own tiny fishing lanterns, set out by predators you would never notice otherwise. The glow can be steady and patient, holding in place while the rest of the forest moves around it. That patience is part of the strategy. Prey does not have to be chased if it can be invited. When you spot a pinpoint of greenish light near the ground, it is easy to think it is magic. It is actually a hunting method refined by evolution. Using light as bait in a world where most creatures assume darkness is safer. Some beetles click and fit themselves upright using a springy joint. A check beetle has a built-in emergency lever. When it ends up on its back, it can arch its body, lock a spine-like structure against a groove, then release it suddenly. The snap launches the beetle into the air with an audible click, often flipping it back onto its feet. This is not just a party trick. On the forest floor, being stuck upside down is dangerous, especially at night when hunters are active and escape routes matter. The jump can also startle predators, buying the beetle a fraction of a second to scurry into cover. What is fascinating is how mechanical it is, like a living spring trap that the beetle can reset and use repeatedly. The beetle does not need long legs or strong wings to solve the problem. It needs leverage and timing. If you ever hear a shark click near leaf litter and see something hop, you may have just watched a survival tool in action, powered by body design rather than muscle strength.
Antlion larvae build sand pits, trapping ants with avalanches. An antlion larva is a patient architect that hunts by making the ground unstable. It digs a funnel-shaped pit in loose sand or dry soil, then hides at the bottom with only jaws visible. When an ant wanders too close, the slope gives way and the prey slides downward like a tiny landslide. If the ant tries to climb out, the larva can flick sand upward, triggering more collapses that undo each attempt.
The trap is simple, but it is tuned to physics. The slope angle is steep enough to fail under movement, and the loose grains make footing unreliable. This turns a flat patch of ground into a one-way slide built for capture. At night, when ants and other insects travel, these pits become silent hazards scattered under shrubs and along sandy trail edges. The larva does not chase. It waits inside the shape it designed, letting gravity do most of the work. If you look closely in the right place, you can find a field of tiny funnels and realize the forest has hunters that build their weapons into the ground itself. Scavengers clean the forest nightly, preventing disease from spreading. A forest produces leftovers every day: fallen animals, dropped fruit, broken insects, and scraps that would rot into problems if nothing reclaimed them. At night, scavengers step in. Some are obvious, like raccoons and possums, and others are small, like carrying beetles that can locate a corpse quickly and begin processing it. By stripping and burying, shredding and consuming, scavengers reduce the time that decaying matter sits exposed, which can limit the spread of certain pathogens and keep the system from clogging. This work is not gentle, but it is essential. The forest stays healthy partly because nothing is allowed to remain unused for long. Even bones can be chewed for minerals, and skins can be pulled apart into pieces that microbes can finish. In daylight, you might never notice this cleanup crew. By morning, the evidence can be gone or hidden. The night shift has already been there, turning loss into nutrients and preventing the forest from becoming a graveyard. Forest sounds change after midnight as species take shifts. The first hours after sunset often belong to the loud performers: frogs calling, insects buzzing, and birds settling into their final complaints of the day. But after midnight, the forest can change its cast. Some singers quiet down, either because temperatures drop or because their best window has passed, and others step forward. You might hear fewer broad choruses and more isolated notes, a single owl contact call, a brief rustle from the understory, the faint drumming of something feeding in the dark. Predators and prey also adjust, which can change how much movement happens on open ground versus under cover. The result is a soundscape that feels less like one long track and more like chapters. If you ever wake in a cabin at 2 o'clock in the morning and feel the forest sounds are different than they were at 10 o'clock, you are not imagining it. The night has shifts, and the forest runs them like clockwork. A quiet night can carry distant calls much farther than day. During the day, heat creates turbulence that breaks sound apart, and wind and background noise can swallow calls before they travel far. At night, the air often cools and becomes more layered, and that can let sound glide over long distances with surprising clarity. A single howl, loon call, or owl hoot can seem to come from nowhere and everywhere. Not because it is closer, but because the atmosphere is helping it travel. In some conditions, sound can even bend, following temperature layers in ways that make it reach places you would never expect. This can matter for animals defending territory, locating family, or coordinating movement without needing to meet face to face.
It also changes the human experience of nighttime forests. A distant creak can suddenly sound louder. A far-off animal can feel nearby. The forest seems larger, yet more connected, because voices can cross gaps that daytime keeps separate.
When the night is calm and clear, the air itself becomes a messenger, carrying information farther than sight ever could. Certain frogs stop calling instantly when a predator approaches. A frog chorus can feel unstoppable until the moment it snaps off like a light. Some frogs listen while they call, and if they detect danger, a nearby splash, a sudden shadow, the approach of a hunting animal, they may fall silent immediately. This silence is not random. It can be a survival switch that removes the easiest clue a predator has. A calling frog is announcing location, and in a dark world, that is a risky advertisement. What is fascinating is how quickly the whole scene can change. One loud pond can become quiet enough that you hear your own breathing, and then, minutes later, the calls may return as if nothing happened. This creates a constant negotiation between the need to attract mates and the need to stay alive. The forest at night is full of this trait, and frogs are living proof that even sound is a decision. When the chorus stops, it is often because something has entered the story, and the frogs have chosen not to narrate their position anymore. Some insects mimic leaves so perfectly, even close eyes miss them. Leaf mimic insects do not just match a general green color. Some copy the details that your brain uses to decide what is real, like vein patterns, irregular edges, and even spots that resemble decay. In the night forest, where your vision is already working with limited information, that precision becomes almost unfair. An insect can sit on a branch and look like part of the plant's history rather than an animal at rest. The illusion often includes posture too. Many leaf mimics hold still for long stretches, then move only in slow, careful steps, choosing moments when wind moves the foliage so their motion blends into the background. This is not a costume for beauty, it is protection, and it is also a hunting advantage for species that ambush prey. The result is a forest where life can hide in plain sight, not by disappearing, but by becoming believable as something else. If you have ever stared at a leaf and suddenly realized it had legs, you have felt the power of this strategy. It makes the forest feel smarter than your eyes. A single owl pellet can reveal an entire night's menu. An owl often swallows prey whole, then later coughs up a compact pellet made of indigestible parts like bones, fur, and insect shells. To most people, that pellet looks like a small, dry lump beneath a roost. To a scientist, it is a record. By carefully separating the contents, you can identify what the owl ate, sometimes down to the exact species of rodent, bird, or beetle. That means one pellet can describe the food web in that forest patch, showing which small animals are common enough to be caught and which habitats the owl has been hunting. It can even reveal seasonal changes, because prey availability shifts through the year, and the pellet contents shift with it. What feels like a gross leftover is actually a data capsule, a physical summary of invisible hunting that happened in darkness. The owl does not intend to leave a report. It simply cannot digest everything. But the forest keeps the evidence anyway, and a careful observer can read it like a page torn from the night.
Night predators often move along rivers and ridgelines as if they were natural highways. In darkness, the easiest path is rarely the most direct. Rivers cut corridors with softer ground and clearer passage, while ridgelines provide firmer footing and fewer tangled obstacles. Many predators learn these features and rely on them as dependable travel routes. This is because efficiency matters when every step requires energy.
A creek's edge can function like a guide rope in the dark, helping an animal maintain direction without seeing far ahead. Ridgelines also offer broader vantage points and carry scent and sound in different ways, making them valuable for sensing prey or detecting rivals. These routes become habitual, and over time, they turn into invisible highways that different species share at different hours. The forest may look like a maze, but for a night predator, it can feel like a map with bold lines already drawn. If you ever notice well-worn paths near water or along a high spine of land, you may be seeing where generations of animals have chosen the same efficient solution. The terrain is not just scenery, it is a guide, and predators read it with their feet. The same tree can host different animals by day and night. A single tree can function like an apartment building with rotating tenants. In daylight, a trunk might be a lookout for a bird, a sunning spot for a lizard, or a workplace for woodpeckers searching for insects under bark. After dark, the same bark can become a hunting wall for geckos, a climbing route for small mammals, or a hiding place for insects that only move when the air cools. Cavities that seemed empty at noon can shelter bats at night, or become temporary refuge for creatures avoiding predators. Even the canopy changes purpose, shifting from feeding and nesting to travel and cover. This constant reassignment happens without conflict because the residents are separated by time, not by walls. The tree does not belong to one species. It belongs to a schedule. That idea can change how you see forests at night. You are not entering a different place. You are entering the next shift in the same place, where the furniture is identical, but the users are completely new. Many seeds travel farther at night when winds stabilize. Some plants rely on wind to carry their seeds, and the best wind is not always the strongest. In many places, daytime heating creates gusty, chaotic air that can drop seeds quickly or slam them into nearby obstacles. At night, the air can become steadier, and that stability can help seeds drift farther and more predictably. A seed with a tuft, wing, or papery sail can stay aloft longer when turbulence is lower, gliding on gentle flows that move through open corridors between trees. Night humidity can also change the feel of surfaces, which can influence how easily a seed releases or how it sticks when it lands. The result is quiet, long-distance travel happening while most of the forest appears asleep. A plant's future may be riding a nighttime breeze past your window, settling into a new patch of soil where it will wait for the right season. When you think about seed travel in the dark, the forest becomes a place that is constantly relocating parts of itself, moving generations forward under cover of night. Under starlight, some flowers reflect ultraviolet patterns insects can see. Many insects see ultraviolet light, and some flowers use that to their advantage by reflecting ultraviolet in patterns that guide visitors toward nectar and pollen. These patterns can act like landing signals, directing an insect's body to brush the right structures for pollination. What makes this especially fascinating at night is that the patterns can still matter in very low light for insects adapted to dim conditions. The flower may look plain to us, but to a moth or another nocturnal visitor, it can have high contrast markings that stand out like bright pathways. Scent often does the long-range work, but the ultraviolet pattern can handle the final approach, helping the insect commit to the right spot instead of wasting time. This creates a private visual language running alongside the more obvious night fragrances. It is another reminder that the forest at night is not simply darker. It is differently visible with signals that are real and functional, yet mostly hidden from human eyes. When a night pollinator finds a bloom quickly, it may be following a sign you cannot see. Every forest night is a rotating cast with new rulers each hour. The forest does not flip from day mode to night mode once. It shifts again and again. Early evening might be the time for cautious foragers. Then later, the deep night belongs to specialists that avoid twilight danger. And near dawn, the first early risers begin to test the air. Temperature changes, dew forms, fog can roll in, and wind can rise or fall. And each change alters who can move safely, who can hunt well, and who should wait. Even the same animal may behave differently across the night, feeding early, traveling later, and resting in the darkest hours. This is why a forest walk at 9 feels different from a walk at 3. Even if the trail is identical, the rulers change, not by law, but by advantage. Whoever is best suited to the current conditions becomes active, and whoever is not slips back into cover. When you picture the forest night as one long scene, it can seem simple. When you picture it as a series of shifting stages, it becomes endless. The night is not a blanket, it is a schedule. Many trees keep growing at night when heat stress drops. Daytime can be harsh for a tree. Sunlight drives photosynthesis, but it also pulls water upward and outward, risking dehydration. After sunset, the air cools, the demand for water eases, and the tree can finally do quieter work. Inside the trunk, stored sugars are moved to the edges where new wood forms, ring by ring, cell by cell. Buds and root tips keep building too, extending into spaces they could not safely push into during the hottest hours. Night growth is not dramatic, like a vine racing up a fence. It is more like careful architecture. A tree is deciding where to reinforce, where to expand, and how to stay balanced against wind and weight. By morning, nothing looks different at a glance. Yet the tree has quietly invested in the shape it will hold for decades. Crickets change chap speed with warmth, revealing the night's mood. A cricket song is made by rubbing its wings together. A tiny instrument hidden in plain sight. Because muscle movement depends on temperature, the rhythm naturally accelerates as the air warms and slows as it cools. That is why a steady night can sound calm and measured, while a mild night can feel busy, as if the ground itself has started ticking faster. People have noticed this for generations, using cricket chirps as a rough sense of whether the evening is turning chilly. The cricket is not trying to report the weather, of course. It is simply operating at the speed its body allows, and the forest overhauls the result. What makes it fascinating is how audible the effect is. You can stand still and hear a living creature's metabolism translated into timing, as though the night has a metronome that speeds up and slows down with the unseen temperature around you. Bats can catch insects mid-air using echoes faster than thought. A bat does not chase the night by sight. It builds the world by sending out calls and listening to what returns. Each echo carries information about distance, size, and movement. And the bat updates this picture again and again while still flying at speed. When it closes in on a moth or beetle, the calls can shift into a rapid, final burst, like a tightening focus. In that moment, the bat is not guessing where the insect will be. It is tracking where it is going.
Some bats even change their call patterns to avoid confusion when hunting near other bats, as if the air could get crowded with overlapping signals. Watching one feed is like watching a living radar system at play. The forest feels dark to us, but to the bat, it can feel detailed, textured, and immediate, as though the air itself has edges. Ants form night traffic lanes, avoiding collisions without any leader. A trail of ants can look like a tiny highway that appeared out of nowhere. In the dark, many species organize into clear lanes with one side flowing out and the other flowing home, even though no ant is directing traffic. Each ant follows chemical cues laid down by others, then adjusts its path through quick touches and subtle sidesteps. When the trail gets busy, the lanes sharpen, because ants that hesitate get nudged back into the stream. It is a self-correcting system that becomes more efficient as more bodies join in. Some ants even take shortcuts around jams, then strengthen those alternate routes with fresh scent, like building a detour that becomes official. If you watch closely, you can see order emerging from thousands of tiny decisions. The forest at night is full of this kind of intelligence, where the group moves like one organism without a single mind in charge. Owls hunt using sound maps that pinpoint prey in darkness. An owl can hunt without seeing its target at all, because the night arrived to it as a landscape of sound. Tiny scrapes in leaf litter, a soft footstep under grass, a brief rustle beside a log. Each one becomes a coordinate. Some owls have ears set at slightly different heights, which helps them judge direction and distance with startling accuracy. The face itself, shaped like a shallow dish, funnels sound toward those ears, turning the head into a living receiver. Then comes the most unnerving part. The owl can adjust mid-flight, correcting its path based on a sound that lasts less than a heartbeat. Under a canopy, where shadows swallow everything, a mouse is not just hidden, it is broadcasting. The owl simply knows how to read the broadcast, and the forest becomes a map written in whispers. As our gentle journey through the forest at night comes to a close, it helps to notice how much has quietly unfolded. What first felt like darkness revealed itself as a layered world full of motion, signals, and careful timing. The forest did not fall asleep. It transformed. Leaves exhaled. Soil continued its work. Wings crossed overhead. Roots exchanged. Insects withdrew. Hunters listened, and light emerged in the least expected places. We moved from the canopy down to the forest floor, from moonlit openings to underground passages, discovering that night is not an absence, but a reordering. A time when familiar trees become waypoints for travelers, when sounds carry farther, when senses linger, and when even stillness holds meaning. Each hour belonged to a different life, and every quiet pause was filled with purpose. Now, as these details drift into memory, there is nothing you need to keep hold of. Let them drift like mist between trees. Let the details soften. The forest can keep its secrets. Your only task now is to rest. If you found comfort in this gentle journey, you're always welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a quiet thought below. It helps others discover these calm corners too. And if your eyes are still open, another peaceful video will be waiting on screen, ready to carry you a little further into rest. But if sleep is already near, allow your breathing to slow. Feel the weight of the day ease out of your body. Imagine the forest settling again, sounds thinning, movement slowing, everything finding its place until morning. There is nothing more you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Sleep well, and good night.